All right, time to talk some baseball with one of my favorites. I loved him when he played for the Rangers. I learned so much from him. Now he's back in the organization as the Major League catching coach. He's also the catching coordinator, so responsible for all the catchers essentially and their development and growth throughout the entire organization. It's Bobby Wilson, who is taking some time to talk with us. This is going to be the first of a few videos we do, but we're going to focus on catching today. Bobby, thanks so much for taking some time.
Yeah, this is awesome, man. I love talking catching. This will run into many videos because something that I love, something I did, and there's a lot of stuff I feel that we can get out there to not just promote catching, but help people with kind of what's going on at the major league level.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess let's start with this. Their coaching staffs are so different now than they were maybe even when you played, certainly when we were growing up watching the game, and the roles and the responsibilities. So Major League catching coach, pretty self-explanatory. Catching coordinator, you oversee the development, like I mentioned, and the growth of catchers up and down through the system. But how would you describe your job if someone asks you without necessarily even mentioning the title? Hey, Bobby, that's cool. You're on the Rangers coaching staff. What do you do?
Yeah, so that's a question I get often, actually. Like, what exactly do you do? With kind of the dual role that I oversee the minor leagues, but also handle the guys we have in the major leagues, obviously. And really, it's at this point, it's more of the technical stuff with them. It's more the fundamental stuff at the major league level. We have an advanced staff as well that handles digging into how we're going to pitch guys. Brett Hayes heads that up for us, and kind of we have discussions and talks throughout the game to try to make adjustments, but Brett pretty much heads that up. My role in game is to make sure that their setups are in a good spot, that they're in a good frame of mind, throwing, blocking, and making sure that the pitches that we need to get called strikes are being called strikes, and just basically keeping them in a good position on the major league side, and honestly keeping it loose in the dugout. It's kind of something I did as a player. It's kind of somewhat of my role with there's one catcher in the game, so I'm solely focused on them, but being able to keep it loose and live in the dugout is kind of something that I've always enjoyed doing, and that's what I do. And then on the minor league side, it's been coordinating the entire system, really. It's putting together a plan in place for the growth of our organization, and giving people expectations and guidelines of what will be expected from a Texas Rangers catcher. And a lot of that comes from my upbringing with the Angels. And Mike Social, we've talked about that numerous times about how important he's been in my life, first and foremost, but in my career, and developed me into the person I am now after playing. He set me up for the long haul. So a lot of the stuff that we use is comes directly from him. And it's something that I lived and I believed in as not a very good player, but something that when it comes to attention to detail and being focused and locked in on what you need to do, and having that structure in place, I believe that it puts us ahead of the rest of the field.
And just to give people some context, we're going to get into maybe some statistics and things that Bobby and the organization use to monitor the progress. Some of this stuff is proprietary. Some of this stuff is private. It's not publicly accessible. One thing that I always will take some time to look at, and for baseball fans out there, baseballsavant.com is a great website. The guy who actually basically developed it now works for the Rangers and their R&D department, Darren Willman. But there's all sorts of information, and one of the statistics runs extra strikes, which essentially it's a calculation that determines runs created or saved based on a catcher's ability to convert pitches into strikes. And it's a counting stat, so the more pitches you receive, the more likely you are to be at the top of the list. And sitting there third and fourth, Jonah Heim and Jose Trevino, and that's significant because the two guys in front of them have caught about 50% more pitches than they have. So it would stand to reason that if they had all received the same amount of pitches throughout the year, Jonah and Jose would be at the very top. So catching has been a strength for the Rangers this year from a defensive standpoint. And we'll circle back to those numbers. I guess, you're not too incredibly far removed from your playing days, but it does seem like there's still a huge gap between maybe what you were learning when you were playing versus what you're teaching now that you're in this role.
Oh gosh, if I tell you, if myself 5 years ago heard what I was teaching our guys now, I mean, it would be a disaster. But yeah, the game's changed, and it's forever changing. It's forever evolving, and that's part of this is staying up with the times, what's relevant, what's working, and making sure that we actually stay a step ahead of what the rest of the industry is doing. So there's I mean, we weren't allowed to go to one knee when I was playing. Even 5 years ago, that was taboo. And now it's mainstream. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's applying it, and
You're talking
it's
about
turned into
was receiving the pitches, right? Getting down on it.
Yeah. Catchers, even blocking from one knee, throwing from one knee, receiving from one knee, and it's kind of been one of those things that there's been a lot of pushback on. I've been one of those people who's pushed back on it. But the more and more I dive into this, and like I said, like I don't want our guys just to be good. I want them to be the best. I want to set them up with everything possible to give them advantage, to make them the best player they can possibly be. And before I jump back into that, there's one message Mike Scioscia told me when I was younger was, he said, Bobby, he goes, I'm going to tell you this. I said, I'm going to give you the formula. He's like, if you want to make wheelbarrows full of money, he goes, just trust me and use this formula. And that's what I tell our players. I said, listen, we've done the work on this. We've dove into receiving. We've dove into blocking. We've dove into throwing. We've done all of this. We've put in the work to give you guys the best advantage so you guys can get wheelbarrows full of money. And at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want these guys to be able to get, make a lot of money, be really good players. And that's why we've taken it to the next level with this stuff and really understand why certain things work, why certain things don't work, adjustments we have to make. And again, part of our program that we've put together is individualizing this for each and every player. If you look at our two catchers right now, Jose Trevino is primarily on a one knee stance, and Jonah Heim is in a traditional stance, right? And kind of the common characteristics that we give those guys is basically it's a hand load. And for those that don't know what that means, it means basically it's a pre-pitch load with the hand, right? So kind of one of our goals is to stay below the baseball. And one thing that we know based off of the numbers that you mentioned is that the elite receivers in the game at this point, they dominate the bottom part of the zone and they dominate arm side, right? The catcher's arm side. And that's where a majority of the pitches are thrown. So that's kind of our focus with receiving. We have to dominate the bottom and we have to dominate arm side. So with that, we actually teach our guys to load to the ground. They don't necessarily have to touch the ground, but we do want them to load below the ball, and we need them to work up through the catch. So a majority of our time is spent on the bottom part of the zone and that arm side, because that's what we've found is the best locations for elite catchers. So that's what we work on. I mean, we obviously work on other areas, and like you said, with all the information and data we have now, our adjustments are made by inning essentially. They're not made, in my day where it was, a month later, you're going, oh, I just wasted a month. Like, our adjustments now are made, inning by the inning, by the game. We don't allow these guys to go a week with doing the same thing. We make these adjustments as fast as possible. And with the video, with the data, we can show them like, hey, this is what's happening. Here's why it's happening. And I was a visual learner, and I feel like the new generation of player is they need it now. They need it right now. And whether that's, social media ties, whatever it is, but they need that information right now. So that's what we want to give them. and back to the hand load, like we talk about loading down to the ground, loading below the ball so that we can work up. And we give these guys a menu item basically of that, so basically it can be glove flat, it can be a pinky, load to the ground, it can be a roll forward, it can be we got corkscrew. We have a bunch of different terminology for this that we use to put them in the best position. And like I said, all of it's individualized. Here's your menu list items, and let's try each and every one of them to see what fits you best.
So you kind of touched on this. I think, maybe 5-10 years from now, organization, the data I had and the data you had, there'd be a lot of variance. Now it seems like, while it's maybe not exactly the same, organizations, top to bottom, all have a ton of data available, but it's about the communication of it. So, and that was something I always was struck by you when you were a player, and I would go to your locker in the clubhouse and pick your brain about whoever was pitching that night or the night before, whatever, is your ability to communicate all this stuff. A lot of people have this stuff up here where they can regurgitate numbers, but to communicate it player to player in a way that they understand and embrace, and maybe even empower them to make the decisions that I do like this, or you just talked about the menu of loading options. This is what I like, or this is for me. What's the process that you take on? What have you learned to best or most effectively communicate something to a player that might be foreign to them?
I think, like I said, showing them exactly what I mean, instead of just saying, hey, do this or do that. A big part of this is making the player believe or think that it's their thought, so a lot of it is like, here's options, I like this one the best. I think this one would be the best for you. But we also have this one. So I want you to try both of those, and, let's make a decision of what's going to work. Now, on the flip side of that as well, it goes, okay, if this is not working, now I have this other option for them that they can use, and they're like, they like the options at this point in time. They like having the choice of what they want to do. But again, if the numbers don't align to what they're trying to do, then we have to make an adjustment. And that's part of the, for instance, Jonah Heim caught last night, and, he felt a little rush. So, we make an adjustment in the second, third inning. It was a timing issue, right? So he felt rushed with his hand. And a lot of times you see with that pre-pitch load, you'll see guys rush to the ground. They'll actually hit the ground and they'll bounce straight up. Well, that causes them to jump above the ball and be on top. And with gravity and the ball coming down, it's going to knock your glove down instead of it going up to catch the ball. So we, those kind of things we can make adjustments in game. As far as relaying the information, like when a player comes to you, you have to be ready. Like you have to let them fail a little bit. But when they come to you and they say, hey, like, this doesn't feel right, you better be ready. You better be prepared. Because if you're not prepared, that's when you lose them, and that's kind of one thing, like I'm pushing to our players, to our catchers, kind of like you said, like the preparation of this is so important, whether it's pitch calling in the game, whether it's game management. Like if you're not prepared, and I tell our players this, I said, anxiety is created when you're not prepared. And I pulled that from my personal experiences when I didn't feel that I was fully prepared to navigate, a in-division rivals lineup. When I wasn't ready or I wasn't prepared for that, I was nervous, my, stomach churning, you're looking around, your head's spinning. But I found that the more that I prepared with all this stuff, the easier it was for me to be able to, one, relay it to the pitcher. And now at this point, the more prepared I am with knowing the numbers, knowing what my eyes tell me, knowing what the industry is telling us, it helps me relay that message and compute all that information. But again, like, to be honest with you, like, we're not scientists, we're baseball players, we're not the smartest people that you have ever been around. So being able to, I hate using this word, dumb it down, but take all that information, process it, but then be able to transfer that where it is easy to digest for the player. And we have analytic people in our organization that they start talking. I'm like, listen, you lost me, man. Like let's slow this down. I went to junior college. That's my highest education. Like, give me a break with this. Give me some easy content that I can digest and then pass on to, the catchers. So yeah, it is a lot of stuff to digest, but it's part of the job now.
All right. So I want to do something here. All right. We're going to share the screen. All right. So you're seeing this, right, Bobby?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I'm curious from a data standpoint, and I'm just showing this to folks. So I mentioned runs, extra strikes here at the top, Sean Murphy, Omar Narvaez, but you see right here, and then you see the amount of pitches that these two have received. Again, these are counting stats. So the more pitches you receive, the more opportunity to have a higher number. So the fact that Jonah and Jose are 3 and 4 in this regard is quite remarkable and speaks so well of their job this year catching when you look at their pitch count, pitches received versus the two ahead of them, and you look at the guys below them, Zunino, Posey, even Max Stassi, who's right at Jose's mark. It's pretty impressive. And then we'll go to this here, strike rate. You got Tomas Nido and then Jonah Heim and Jose Trevino, and they're separated by 0.2%, right? 52.2, 52, and that's second and third in Major League Baseball. So I just wanted to show people this. I mentioned earlier, there are stats that we as the public can consume. There's stuff that you all have as well. How much, or I guess, what are the things that you look at? What are the numbers that you look at, be it stuff that anyone can see or stuff that only you're able to look at because it's proprietary to the organization?
Yeah, so we have an in-house system, and then we have a third-party source that we use basically in our organization. And with the third-party one, that's the one that I personally use the most because that's what I used as a player. That's what I'm more comfortable with. It's what I understand. And in that actual one, kind of like you said, with the pitch number, with guys catching more pitches, the one that I use actually averages it out, right? So if they were to catch the same amount of pitches, whether you caught 10 pitches or whether you caught 5,000 pitches, it averages out to let them know. And that's what I wish I could show you mine, because we're 1-2 right now in ours, which is cool to see. And the cool part about that is, like, I was able to talk to Jason Varitek the other day, who I loved as a younger guy. I got to actually play against him. And when you hear people come up to you and they're like, man, what are you guys doing different? And what are you guys doing that is making you guys 1-2? And if you combine our guys, and one of the stats I look at is strikes looking above average, right? And basically what that computes is, if you get a pitch that's called 25% or less, you get credit for it. And if you catch a pitch, or if you lose a strike, that's called a strike 75% or more, you actually you get a deduction for it. So there's that, and with that, that's called SLAA, strikes looking above average, right? And that's pitch dependent. So how many pitches you actually receive, that's a raw number, right? And if you combine both of our guys, we've actually, our score right now is roughly 160. To put it in perspective, the next closest team is at 55.
Oh, wow.
And there's only 7 or 8 teams that are actually in the positive, and if you look at from our score 160 to the last team in baseball, they're actually at negative like 170, 180. So what Jonah and Jose and now Yohel Pozo and John Hicks have done is absolutely remarkable, because honestly, the umpires now are really, really good, and for us to be able to, like I said earlier, not just gain strikes outside of the zone, but keep strikes, goes to show why we've been so successful, and another, so there's, and I want to point out, there's a couple formulas that we use. The SLAA, strikes looking above average, those actually have a strike probability attached to them, right? So what I mean by that is that if a pitch is called, there's no pitch in baseball that's called 100% of the time called a strike. The highest probability you get is 99.99999, whatever it is, because there's no one pitch is called as an absolute. So with that strike probability, we'll say a pitch is called a strike 60% of the time, right? And I convert that to a strike. Basically, I'm getting 0.6 points, right? And if I was to lose that pitch, I would get negative 0.4,
yeah.
right? And that's how we kind of compute our in-house system. So every day our guys get here's what you were, and it's based purely off strike probability. Whereas the third party, they take into account hitter, umpire, pitcher, catcher. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But our in-house just calculates that strike probability, which I think is a pretty good way to do it. It's very simple, very easy, but digestible for me and for our catchers. And then we have
question.
Yeah.
So just use that example, the 60%, it's called a strike 60% of the time. Is that just for this season? How far, like that environment that is creating that number? Is it just for the given year? Or how far back does that data accrue, I guess?
So that's one thing that I'm unclear of, to be honest with you. What I would say is kind of registered off the year, because these numbers are, even if you look back at last year's numbers, they still move from time to time. So I'm assuming that it's kind of a running number of it, not just solely based off this year or, even the last. I would say it's most likely a running. I'm unsure of that, but just based off seeing numbers kind of move here and there, I would have to imagine that would kind of be part of it. But like I said, you have the SLAA, then you have our in-house system, which calculates strike probability. And then I told you about the SL plus. That's what we look at, and that's the average one basically. So, and identifying, good receiving catchers, that's part that we can go in and say, okay, well, this guy only caught 10 games last year, but in those 10 games, he stacked up with Jose Trevino, or he stacked up with Jonah Heim, or, Tucker Barnhart's, one of those guys who's always up there. The guy who we played against last night, Max Stas, he's always up there. It kind of puts it into, this is where this guy stands. This is how good he is. Instead of just using kind of, well, he caught 2,000 more pitches. At least we have a baseline of what's average.
Right.
And that's kind of what we evaluate all of the receiving stuff with. And then moving on, like my next favorite one is adjusted FRAA, right? So that's adjusted fielding runs above average. And basically that encompasses everything. So it's blocking, it's throwing, and it's with your receiving numbers. So with that number, and that's another one through our third party site here that kind of monitor pretty much every day, just to see where we stack up against the rest of the league. And in that, our guys are 1-3 right now, so it's there's stuff that we've adjustment we've made, not just with our receiving, but there's a lot of stuff blocking that's changed since I caught too. It was, hey, you got to work harder, you got to block more, you got to do this, you got to do that. And it's like, well, why do I have to work harder when the whole point of this is just to keep the ball in front of me and keep it close to me? Why do I have to bang my knees? Why do I have to block 1,000 balls? Why can't I just block 100 balls and think about precision of blocking and where I want to blocking and how am I going to control it and the fundamentals of blocking to, at the end of the day, keep the ball close to me and not allow that base runner to advance 90 feet. So there's like, throwing adjustments. We make throwing adjustments. We throw every 3 days, basically. The first game of every series, we do our workout, our catcher's workout, which, is something I took from Sosha. We do our blocking, we do our throwing, we do our receiving, probably every couple weeks we do plays at the plate, we'll do pop flies. So we're getting our work in the first game of every series. And it's like, the cool part about this at this point is Jonah, Trevi, Pozo, Hicks when he was here, these guys, they wanted to do that, which is cool because it's September and I'm like, hey guys, let's take a day off. They're like, no, we want to go out there and do it. Like, these guys are having success and now they want to get even better at it. So it's, all this stuff is so rewarding, and being able to put the numbers with what we're doing and them having success. At first there it was tough to get somewhat buy-in. Basically coming off my, my playing career, and I had to earn trust with these guys. I remember in Jonah in spring training, the first time I saw him, I'm like, hey Jonah, what's going on, boy? He's very quiet, doesn't want to, he doesn't let loose too often, and had kind of break that barrier down, had to show him. And we went through spring training, and it was like, based off our strike probability, it was like, Jonah was -4 today. The next time he caught, he's -3, his next time is -2, and he kind of gradually kept getting better. And I said, I told him, I said, it's like building a house. It's like building anything. It's going to get worse before it gets better, and to the Rangers fans, I think that's kind of where we're at right now with, our team, everything gets worse before it gets better, and for Jonah, it was the same. For us right now as a team, it was the same. Like, it wasn't great at first, and Jonah will be the first one to tell you that, but he bought in, he had faith in it. He listened. He wanted to do it. And I told him, I put him on Terry. I said, Jonah, you have an opportunity to make a ton of money in this game if you just trust me with this, and it's hard to take that leap of faith with somebody you've just met, especially with him, being traded so many times. But, he did, and he's starting to see the improvement that he's made, and potentially could be a long-term fit for our organization. So
how important is it to adjust on the fly when you're catching, Bobby?
Every pitch is an adjustment. You're reading swings, you're reading how the ball's moving. There's so much you're reading and digesting. Every pitch, the catchers are the quarterbacks of the team. There's so much prep, there's so much work that goes into it, that every single second you're making an adjustment. On the bench, you got Brett Hayes going over pitch calling with you. Then you got Doug Mathis coming in, you doing more pitch recall. How are you going to attack the next guys? It's a lot of information and a lot of work for these guys. So, like I said, I'm blessed that I have, Hosey and Jonah, because like I said, they've grasped everything. They work like you would not believe. They study like you would not believe. It's just been, it honestly has been absolute blast and pleasure to be with these guys daily.
All right. So here's the reason I asked that. We're going to make an adjustment on the fly. So you and I had talked that next time we were going to get together, we were going to discuss the 2015 Rangers season, of which you were a part. But I think next time we get together, I want to talk more about catching, because I know we could probably do this for 10 hours, but I want to get into game calling. I want you to take us through a game and what you're doing. You mentioned the adjustments just there and at the beginning. Want to get into that and want to get into the future of catching, because I know there are potential rule changes that it could impact things, and just where the game's going, controlling the running game. People aren't running as much. How's that impacted things? So I want to continue this conversation for our next episode. But before we go, I got a few rapid fire catching questions for you.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go.
All right. Favorite catcher growing up?
Pudge. I think Pudge was everybody's favorite, right? Absolute stud. Fortunate enough for me, I've gotten to know him being part of this organization. Funny, real quick, but Pudge used to, when I was catching, he used to sit there in the front row. and as I'd be running off the field or running out the field, Bobby, hey, come on, you got, we got to use this pitch for this guy. I'm like, okay, Pudge, like I got it, and then I right there, I would make that adjustment, and there'd be times I'd be looking over Pudge and he'd be going, hey, breaking ball right here, so like to be, I had the Wilson glove that Pudge used, like, I don't know, he was always my favorite, and being able to know him now and have a relationship with him is like, it's pretty cool.
Favorite catcher to watch that you played against, like the guy that when you were sitting in the dugout and he was catching, you really enjoyed watching him do his thing?
Roberto Perez over the last couple of years is one guy who I've like, he does everything really good. He throws well, he blocks well, he receives well, he handles his staff well. He's kind of one guy that sticks out. And it was pretty cool watching Joe Mauer play. And then being able to play with him in Minnesota, his final year was really cool. Man, those two guys, I got a lot of respect for Martin Maldonado, in division guy, because he was an Angel originally, and to see where he's come, and I enjoy the game managers more than the guys who throw well, more than, guys who do, who hit well, because I could never hit. So, I don't, that doesn't really affect me, but the guys who are game managers, and you see that their pitchers have faith and trust in them. Those are the guys that I kind of gravitate more to. So probably, Roberto Perez at this point, like he's kind of been my favorite to watch over the past 5 years, I'd say 5-6 years.
All right, a few more, because I know you got to take the bus. Catchers they spend a lot of time together, and it's the one position where you can be the primary guy, but you're still only going to catch maybe 110 games or so. There are a few guys exceptions, but you really do share playing time as a catcher more than any other non-pitching position. Who is the catching teammate you had that you most enjoyed being in a tandem with that guy, whether the playing time was even or no matter what the distribution was, but you just loved being a catcher with that guy?
Well, so it was a trio, actually. Jeff Mathis and Mike Napoli. And obviously, Nap's been one of my best friends, lifelong friend for, since we met each other in 2005, I want to say, with the Angels in the minor leagues. And we built this relationship, this bond to where, I would do anything for him and he would do anything for me, and I try to tell our guys throughout the season too, like, it's not just going to be you two guys. Like, there's going to be guys in camp that you're going to spend time with, because very rarely do two catchers ever make it through an entire season, so I tell those guys, like, this is a group of people, because we're going to need that third, fourth, possibly fifth catcher, and I was the third catcher with Jeff and with Nap. And like I said, those guys did everything for me. They took care of me. If we went to dinner, they would pay for it, like just everything. And I can comfortably say that, without those guys, without their leadership, without their guidance, I wouldn't be the player, coach, person that I am, because those were two guys who showed me the way to do things. And like I said, we had each other's back. Like, you couldn't say one thing about one of us without the other. It was like a brotherhood. You say one thing about one brother, the other two are going to beat you up, and that's kind of how it was. We were that tight, and we cared that much about each other, and we had success in those years too. And that's a big part of it. It's when I was in Texas with Chris Jimenez, like, we had a great relationship, and it showed on the field. We helped each other out, and that run in 15, I know we're going to talk about that later, but that run in 15, a lot of that was due in part to Chris and I's relationship. We stuck together. We made sure that we were on the same page with each and every pitcher. And we honestly cared more about their success than our success. And I think that's why, Jeff and Nap and I had success, and Jimmy and I had success here.
All right. So next time, I got some more rapid fire questions at the end. We'll get into the catching side of things a little bit more, plus baseball stories with Bobby. There's plenty of that. But this is episode 1. We've got more episodes coming. Just talking baseball with Bobby Wilson. Bobby, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. I can't wait to get some of those stories out.
Let's do it.